go ahead and look at a function. So I can say function foo, let's say, takes a parameter, and then I use curly braces for it. So unlike Python where we use a colon. And in Python, of course, indentation is meaningful, right? So after you have when you have a function definition, the code of the definition after the colon is indented. In JavaScript, this white space is not meaningful to the compiler, although it is, of course, meaningful to readers. So you might say something like return a plus 3, and then close the curly brace. So that's how you would write it, but theoretically, you could get rid of this white space here, and it wouldn't affect how the function worked. It would just be very confusing to a reader if you have indentation that doesn't match. And now I can call foo. So foo of 9, of course, returns 12. Foo of 9 returns 15. You can have nested functions, just like you can have nested functions in Python. So I might have a function bar that takes no parameters, so you have to put the empty parens there. And let's say this just returns a plus 5. Okay, and then the function foo itself might just return, let's say, bar 2 times bar. By the way, the semicolons here are all not strictly necessary, and the JavaScript will try and figure out where statements end, but in practice you want to always have semicolons at the end of each statement, unless you have a curly brace, in which case that's not necessary. So I'm going to declare foo here, and what's important to note is bar is what's called a closure. That is, it's closed over its lexical environment, so it has access to the A that's coming in. So if I call foo of 2, then it's going to be 14, because bar is going to be returning 7, so this will be 2 times 7. This syntax is equivalent to saying something like const foo equals function of A, and then I can have the same here. Well, so it would have been, except we've already declared const foo as a function, and so it's constant, and so we can't rewrite that. So I can make this be, let's say, phi, and now I can call phi of what did we call before, 2 returns 14. Okay, so these are basically equivalent. So this is an anonymous function. That is a function that doesn't have a name, and I can assign that to phi. There is an alternate syntax for anonymous functions. We'll talk a little bit later that it actually has a slight difference in meaning as well. And this is the preferred way to declare anonymous functions. So if you're just declaring a named function, you really want to declare it here with function and then the function name. If you want an anonymous function, so let's look at an example. Let's say we want to create a function, baz, that takes a function as a parameter. Okay, and so this is going to call f of 3 times f of 2. Let's say that's what it's going to return. Okay, so if I now call baz with, well, I could call it with phi, for example, and we get 224. So now what if I want to call baz with a function that I am defining right here, right now? So I could say function of A and then return, A times 3, let's say. That would work. But whenever you have anonymous functions, we prefer to use this alternate syntax. And so the alternate syntax is what's called arrow syntax. So the arrow syntax looks like this. We have parens, and then we have our list of arguments. So let's say it's A. And then we have an equals right arrow. So the rule is we can put brackets, so curly braces, and then we can use the return. There is a shortcut, which is, well, first off, we could also have multiple lines in those curly braces. So we could say, for instance, const x equals 2, return a times x. Okay. As a shortcut, what we can do is, if we have a single line that returns something, so we have this return a times 3, we can get rid of the braces and get rid of the return, and just say a times 3. Okay. So this says we're calling Baz with a function that takes one parameter, a, and then returns a times 3. And then there's also a shorthand that says if you only have one parameter to this anonymous function, this arrow function, you can get rid of the parens. All right. If you have two parameters, you need the parens. And if you have 0 parameters, you need the parens. But if you have exactly one parameter, you don't need this here. Okay, so this is the simplest case. And what we've done is made it simple because first, we only have one parameter, so we don't need the parens here. Second, we only have a single expression, which is what we want to return. So we can just put the expression here. If we need multi-lines, we would have to put curly braces, and then we need to explicitly put a return before the value we're trying to return. That is arrow functions, and again, the thing to keep in mind is you want to use that instead of functions. We'll talk a little bit later after classes about what actually the small difference is in the behavior of these two kinds of anonymous functions.